time since anybody since Steph Curry over the last little bit. What has caused a little run he's on, and what have you seen from him over that time period that put up that kind of production?
I didn't see it, so I don't know the specific stats. I think he's very aware of what he can do, and I also think that he's very aware of what his teammates can do. But he has as high a feel of time, score, of momentum as I've ever been around. And so I think he helps put his teammates in the best possible position. And I think he knows when it's time for him to make a play or to make a play for someone else. I think the rate at which he's getting fouled has really helped our team. And those, it doesn't make much sense, but he's also averaging a career high in defensive rebounds, and that's huge. He had 3 defensive rebounds in the second half that were amongst the forest, and he was able to get it. And we were really struggling with guard rebounds in the first half. So I think he's doing things on both ends that give us a chance to be in a position to have success.
Mississippi State, really good defensive team. You are really
Third
good
best in the
defensive
country.
team.
Yeah, their defense is dramatically ahead of ours in all of the metrics. They're third best in the country. Tennessee was 1. They're the second best team in turning teams over in our league behind Missouri. They do it a completely different type of way. Number 1 at protecting the rim. Yeah, they're ultrasound defensively. Do some zone stuff in the full court and in the half court to keep you off pace. Predominantly man with really long, big, strong, athletic players that can guard multiple positions. They switch a lot. Sometimes they switch everything, keep the ball in front, stay out of rotation. Coach Jans is, I know he's not known nationally. He soon will be, but he's as good a coach in between the lines as anybody in the country.
Anything in particular you'd stress your guys to expect from a team, not just a road environment, but a team kind of backs up against the wall playing for their NCAA tournament lives?
So are we.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're in the same position.
You don't feel like you've got a spot nailed down now?
Oh, and have you been here and we had a spot?
Well, I haven't been here at a point where you are.
We were ranked
Wow.
36th in the net last year and didn't get an invite.
But I think you're like 22 or 23.
Today. It's 10 days to go before the conference tournament.
All right. Does this, do you sense that this game will, I mean, it's obviously a huge game for everybody, but is Anderson Garcia the type of guy that you would sense that it would mean anything more to him since he's playing for his
I think it's becoming more commonplace
Yeah.
in the portal era. Obviously, we've played Arkansas a few times. We haven't played Michigan State. We haven't played Duke. And it's only been going on, I guess, for 2 years now, but I think that that's going to kind of become commonplace. Kids used to say, I remember him from this team in AAU. And now they say, no, I remember this kid from Division I school. Like number 10 on their team, we played against him when he was at Oregon State, right? And so, especially early in the season, when there's not much content on what they're doing for their particular team, you're showing clips of the last school they played at. So I think in this new model, I think it'll become commonplace. But they have a new staff with many new players, so he knows some of those kids, but they're playing a completely different style than they did under Coach Holland.
This would be considered a quadrant 1 victory.
Yeah.
So would you feel comfortable about your NCAA tournament life then with one
Yeah,
more win?
I don't want
One
to. I haven't said anything politically charged this year, and I'm going to try to stay away from it. It would be, I think, our 6th Quad 1 win. I think our 6th one was actually Tennessee, and I think Auburn became a Quad 2 when we played them at home, but I anticipate they'll end up being a Quad 1. So
Now, this is the best conference start y'all have had per Brad since 1979-80. Just as a retrospective,
were you born then?
I was not.
It's a long time.
Another 7
Olin
years.
was.
Olin was.
I was graduating high school.
What, as a perspective, what do you remember about Coach Metcalf and just basketball at that time?
Just bits and pieces. I've done some research when I was hired here on Coach, and what he accomplished over decades. Obviously, Coach Thornton is probably my #1 conduit to that era. Coach Gillespie was always very high. I think it was my 2nd year here, so 05-06, we started the Shelby Metcalf Classic. That was when the NCAA had changed kind of how you could have tournaments. I can't remember how that worked. Kind of what an MTE is now. It was the initial era of some legislative change where you could, in essence, host a 3-game tournament. And then Rock actually played in that tournament the year I was the head coach at New Orleans. Lamar was in I guess what was the 2nd annual Shelby Metcalf Classic. I enjoy learning, reading, studying those coaches that were able to stay at a place for such a long period of time. Similar to what I said about Coach Blair last year, that era of college athletics is over. There's still some coaches that started long before, but you just don't find that anymore. Was Coach Metcalf the coach here 29 years?
Something like that. He's a long time. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been 30. I just have great respect for being able to lead and have success over that long a period of time. And I know the world is not near that patient anymore, but I always tell my children, everybody has a different definition of success, and you're entitled to your own definition. But the older you get, I think you'll learn that time or some portion of time has to be included in your definition. Because a lot of people can do things for a day or a week or a year, but can they do it over a long period of time? And obviously, Coach Metcalf was from that era, and what he did for this program, I would say no one will ever even come within that realm.
So I want to ask you about those teams you mentioned when you were here under Coach Gillespie, just how much Coach Gillespie rubbed off on you just stylistically, and then also if you see any similarities between this team and some of those teams from like that toughness, gritty standpoint.
I was just happy Coach gave me a job. I don't think stylistically anything we do is the way Coach does it. Coach is a savant. Because he's not always comfortable talking, people negate how intelligent he is. If he took the Mensa test, he would be admitted. Coach is brilliant. It would be hard to compare this group to that group. Joe Jones was a 4-year starter. Antonis meant so much to the team. Josh Carter was in our first recruiting class. Dominique Kirk we signed in the spring when we got the job. I think Dominique Kirk started more games than any player that's ever played here. AC Law was on the team. Antoine Wright was on the team. I don't know. Chris Walker was a walk-on and I think he started 26 games at the 4 as a 6'2" walk-on. he for sure was first to the floor more than anybody on our team. I think they were 0-16 when Coach was hired. I think we were 8-8 in year one, and Coach was Coach of the Year after being preseason picked last. So I think we were 10-6 in year number 2. Coach was Coach of the Year. I think Coach was Coach of the Year 5 of his first 7 years as a head coach. He was 4-26 in year 1 at UTEP. Took the job 11 days before game number 1. He was 26-4, I believe, in year number 2. Was Coach of the Year. Came here, was Coach of the Year year 1 and year 2. I know when I was here. Was Coach of the Year at Kentucky. Yeah, I forgot what your question was, but that probably suffices.
What are some of the keys in order to be successful tomorrow afternoon?
They are really, really big. They do an incredible job of protecting the rim defensively. Number 1 has the highest usage rate of anybody that we've played with his size. He leads the team in field goal attempts and has never taken a 3, and he's their leading scorer, and he is their leading rebounder, offensive rebounder and defensive rebounder. He leads their team in block shots. It's very rare that you would find a player who is tied for turnovers, is 4th on their team in assists, leads their team in field goal attempts, field goal makes, free throw attempts, free throw makes, offensive and defensive rebounding, and the highest usage rate, and has never taken a 3. The paint and what transpires in the paint on both ends, I think, is what will be the key to the game.
And then just put everything aside, what you guys have on the line coming up the next 7 days.
Yep.
You guys are such a fun group to watch. Have you been able to just kind of step back and enjoy the ride you're on?
Not very well. Not because I'm being a jerk in my response. I think that it's very rare. You would have to do some research over the last 10 years. Power 5 teams that have had a chance and have won their league. We only have 2 losses after 15 games. Normally, that's enough to win the league. Statistically speaking, if you look at what has transpired thus far in the SEC, with 4 games to go, we were assured a top 4 seed. That rarely ever happens with that much time to go. With 3 games to go, we're assured a top 3 seed. That rarely happens. And I haven't had time to do it just because of my schedule, but I would be interested in the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC in the last 10 years. What is the average number of losses in conference play of the teams that have won an outright league? We won the league at Marquette the year we went to the Elite 8, but we tied. And we were 14-4. And at that time, the Big East was the best league in the country. So I think I will enjoy it. I love being around our guys. I know the results make it easier, but I love who they are as people. I think that's a big reason why we're in the position that we're in. I think the continuity of our staff on and off the floor is as good as I've ever seen. And the one thing that I try to bring attention to with you guys, but also even within our organization, is the accountability of each person, whether they're wearing a suit and tie or a uniform, the accountability that they have had to the responsibility that has been assigned to them. I think to be able to be 13-2 after a 6-5 start speaks to the willingness to work really hard and try to perfect what it is that you're in charge of. And that, for me, just because I like to work, that's a joy in and of itself to see that growth. But I think when it's all said and done, I think I'll try to find some time and relive some of it, because you don't really have much of a chance to relive it, because you're trying to prepare for the next one. The pace doesn't change, like, I talked to our guys 2.5 weeks ago. We're always talking about intangibles and things that is commonly not seen or commonly not talked about, and how we have to compete in those things. And we give words to what those intangibles are, but it was 2.5 weeks ago before our home game against Auburn. Yeah, it could have been before Georgia, but we need to begin to work on our endurance. And that's not a category that's in a box score, but how can we find ways in the film room and in practice and our skill work each morning to focus on endurance? And then I brought it to their attention the other day, like, do you remember when we were playing Auburn and we were saying, this is the biggest game of the year? Yeah, I remember. And do you remember when we played the next game, it seemed bigger than Auburn? And then when you played Arkansas, it seemed bigger than Auburn. And then at Mississippi State, it seemed bigger, or at Missouri, it seemed bigger. Yeah. And then when you play Tennessee, you're like, Buzz, this one has to be the biggest, right? This is the biggest one. Yeah, it is. It's the biggest one. And now here we are 2.5 days later, Mississippi State is bigger than that one. And so the crescendo of the endurance required, it's hard to relive any of it, right? You gotta move on. Even though it's good and you want to enjoy, you have to move on.
And watching some of this stuff, would you have enjoyed coaching in a non-shot clock era?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd be ill-equipped, because in my career, it's always been there. I think early in my career, though, Travis, I can't remember, when did it change from 35 to 30?
I have to look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my career started when it was 35.
Mm-hmm.
And in truth, it didn't really come into play. But when it went to 30, now all of a sudden, you start seeing teams like what we do. There's some level of pressure. Very rarely do teams just, we're going to let you dribble across half court and we're going to guard you for 26 seconds. And, for over a decade, they've been saying that they're going to move it to 24 like they play in the NBA, which I think would change offenses and defenses even more. So I don't know. I would have to think on that. I don't know what I would think about not having a shot clock. I guess just hold the ball.
All right, Trevor?